It's a huge disappointment. It's something where I might have to recommend to people that they may pass up on this because the chuck is so inferior that I know that I'm going to end up finding these drills and use over the years where this collar is going to be spinning and there's going to be chuck failures, and it's pretty disappointing. Catus Maximus here. This is time with a review of the DeWalt DW210G. So this is their high-speed, high-productivity half-inch drill. Came out with it a couple, 3 years ago. It was initially pretty darn expensive. I think even like Lowe's was selling it for $160. Always wanted one of those, just too much. Especially when for $100 you could get one of these 235G, the new Type 5 ones. That's 1,000 RPM and an 8.5 amp motor. Not a big incentive to buy another drill that was only moderately more powerful, 10 amps at 1250 RPM. So this was really just for people who needed to drill a lot of large holes very quickly. And if I could get this thing, oh, I see what's going on. I opened the wrong side of the box, didn't I? No bag or anything. There's our book. It does come with a metal handle. So anyway, recently the price has dropped to $120, just a normal retail price, at least at the Blue Box store. And I'm sure that's just because sales haven't been that great on this unit, just because it's kind of hard to justify. Once again, unless you're just drilling tons of holes as a commercial contractor. But I like the way this thing looks, and it certainly is a pretty interesting half-inch drill, that's for sure. Let me get this, the chuck key is not very good. Anyway, here it is. We do have several notches here, so it should hold on to. I'm probably going to end up putting a different handle on this, although it does come with a metal one that is rubberized, so not too bad, although this handle had been crunched down from the factory, so it doesn't really want to fit. I keep bumping my camera with this stupid drill. There we go. I think the handle could be a little bit longer. That's what I have on this one. This is a real common handle for Milwaukee tools, and I find them all the time, and they tend just to be a little bit longer. The other thing I liked about the Milwaukee is it's a much larger bolt than what the DeWalt has, so I'll end up doing that. Once again, as far as how this drill actually looks, it does look pretty mean. It has like a really kind of a thicker, beefier handle. There's actually ventilation in the handle, which I'm surprised. I think that's to help prevent the throttle unit or the trigger unit from wanting to overheat, because they're driving so many amps to such a small tool. We do have our ventilation. This time they put a bunch of little micro slots, I think, to prevent some, dust and larger particles in there, but that does cause restriction. That may be something I end up modifying, is getting in there with a knife and just cutting out all these little bumps or all these little pegs, just so you get a little bit more airflow. Another thing we're doing is they have like these little vents to help direct the air, which I think is, is just fine. Matchstick reverse, also just fine, rubber molded. It's only a double reduction drill instead of a triple reduction, and not a lot else to say. This is a Type 2, so obviously there's something going on with the Type 1s, and so they decided to change it. But, it does look pretty mean. It has this texturing on the top, so you can, grab it and hold it like this. Always thought this was one of the better DeWalt drills. It's actually, I like the design where they make it flat top so that it's easy just to set it on the back of the tool, and it's actually a pretty good idea. I'm actually surprised that they caught that, but I think they're realizing a lot of people are going to be picking this up and drilling a lot of holes, so they'll be picking up and setting it down, and it's easier to deal with when you can put it upside down. The bit doesn't want to hit anything, and then it makes it easy just to grab it and pick it up. Just got it plugged in. They use an 18. It's a pretty nice thick rubberized power cord, only rated for 60 degrees Celsius, so not the highest temperature. Unfortunately, it's 18 gauge, and so that makes it a little bit thin for a 10 amp tool. I mean, this thing's rated for 1,000 watts continuous output, so I'll probably end up replacing that with the 16 gauge cord, but it does definitely sound pretty serious. About online is that the gears are a little noisy. That's at the end of this video, we will take a quick look at that. And just for a comparison, the DW210G has been, it's the #1 selling half-inch drill from DeWalt. It does sound, definitely sounds different. I think the fan noise is a little lower on the newer unit, but the gears on the 235s definitely quieter. Yeah, I can definitely see why people are having concerns, because you'd have a drill like that and the gears sound great, and you have this thing. But I think that's just because the gears are actually particularly coarse and thick in this gearbox. So let's do a couple drilling activities. This might be a bit that somebody would use a drill like this for. This is an old plantor bit. They don't make these anymore because they're, quite frankly, a little bit dangerous, but they're essentially like the ultimate aggressive spade bit. Really known for jamming up at the blink of an eye. So we'll go ahead and run that and maybe see how it does. Okay, getting this set up, I've already noticed there's a very subtle difference, but this chuck, this collar, see how there's like a shelf? This is a much cheaper chuck. That's actually a really cheap chuck, and they don't use a chuck lock screw. It's one of the more modern area drills where they just torque the chuck on super hard, so it makes it super hard to replace, but it is not a very good chuck at all. I'm sure that's going to end up causing people issues in a few years. The big difference is on traditional Jacobs chuck, this whole collar presses in over the top of the chuck, so it fits around the nose, and that's the easiest indication. This one is pretty cheesy because this collar sits under the shelf. It's a much weaker and cheesier design, so I am pretty disappointed by that they would use such a cheap chuck on one of their more premium drills. Anyway, let's see how it performs here. If I can get the cord out of the way. There we go. Make sure I don't jam this planitor. It definitely gets it done. Let's back this out. There we go. I'm going to do it one more time here, and then we'll see how the DW235 performs when it's just a little bit less power. There we go. Alright, and just to compare, we'll do the new Type 5 8.5 amp 1000 RPM 235G just for comparison purposes here. Actually, it's obvious that that is a faster, a little bit more powerful, but not by much. But at least it's obvious. I was a little bit afraid that it wouldn't have been quite as dramatic. Or I should say, that wasn't dramatic, but at least a bit more noticeable. As much as I'd like that, everything, they have something going on here where the spindle is actually gosh, this my camera setup. The spindle actually pulls in and out, which is no good. There's no snap ring here. There's nothing that really captures the bearing. The thing that keeps the spindle from pushing backwards is actually the diaphragm, rather than having, you know, the gear and the chuck be tight on the inner race of the bearing, and then that front bearing being pushed into a bore, and then like a snap ring or something in front. This is not that way. It's going to get more loose. This is the kind of stuff that you just can't identify unless you actually get the tool in your hand, and once you get it in your hand, you see this. It's not acceptable. I will be returning this because I'm not going to buy a drill that's... this is just terrible. This is one of those tools that somebody... the engineering team was like, we're going to come out with a really awesome drill, but they did a few compromises which actually end up making it not viable in the long term, and everything else is so nice about this, but the way that spindle's set up, this is only going to get worse. It's only going to start sliding in and out more and more over the usage. Not having that bearing captured there means as it's sliding back and forth, it's wearing out the aluminum, which means it's going to allow this chuck to start wobbling back and forth sooner because it's beating up this bore. With the cheesy chuck, there's only so many cycles this chuck will take before that snap ring just folds downwards. You're putting a lot of pressure on there trying to get the bit to hold. That will fail. You know, this is something that I wanted to like so much, but when they talk about engineered to fail, That's what they mean, is something like this. And it's probably really disappointing to the design team that the compromises that they had to make really are fundamental flaws for what would be a really cool tool. Looks awesome, tons of power. But those few compromises, especially up here with the spindle, as minimal as they seem, if you're anybody who's not a homeowner, who is a professional, who's going to be picking this up and setting it down dozens of times a day, week after week, month after month, it will fail. It's not going to be like the 235Gs, which you can find old ones that are 10 years old and still work great. Anyway, so I'm going to end this overly long video about that. You know, it started out, and you kind of saw my progress. I started out pretty excited, and as with my low IQ and limited knowledge, just seeing the stuff going on with the spindle and the chuck and everything, I'm not going to keep this tool. There's just no reason to keep a tool that I know. Part of the reason I buy these is because if I'm in situations where I really want to run it hard, loan it to somebody, anything like that, that's the whole purpose, is, you know, heavy duty. And this is not. Anyway, maybe I'll take a look at their 5-inch grinder. I kind of like that thing. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.